Hello, today is Tuesday, February 27th, 2018. I'm Joe Schmidt with DC2, and this is Staying Connected. I'm joined today by Colleen Boothby, one of LB3's senior partners, and Colleen is based in Washington, D.C. Back in July of last year, Colleen and I recorded a podcast on why enterprises need to care about net neutrality. Well, a lot has happened with net neutrality since we recorded that podcast, so we thought it would be a good idea to give you an update. Okay, Colleen, what the heck is going on in Washington?
Oh, so much is going on in Washington. Last July, we explained what net neutrality is, and we focused on why enterprise customers need to worry about a change in the rules. So just by way of reminder, this issue is about money. It is about enterprise customer money. It is not about the Internet. It's about Internet access, which is a very different thing. Internet access is that connection from your phone company or your cable company between every end user location and the Internet. It's like the local loop for telephone, old-fashioned telephone service, or the special access channel termination that connects an individual location to the bigger public network. Sometimes people call it the final mile, but it's that initial link that all your traffic, the traffic coming to you and the traffic you're sending, has to travel over. So net neutrality has been getting a lot of press since then, and I think it's been a lot of heat and not much light. Again, by way of reminder, the enterprise customer issue with net neutrality is double dipping by ISPs. There's an ISP on your end of the Internet that you pay. Your customers have their own ISP at their end, and they pay that ISP. That ISP at the customer end of the Internet has what policymakers have always called a terminating monopoly, meaning that all traffic bound for an ISP's subscriber has to go through that ISP. You as an enterprise customer don't get to pick your customer's ISP. You get to pick your own ISP, but you don't get to pick the ISP that the customer you're trying to communicate with uses. And you don't get to choose some other route to reach the ISP subscriber. You must use the ISP selected by the subscriber in order to get your traffic to the subscriber. So the ISPs have all said they want to start charging non-subscribers before letting that non-subscriber traffic get through to the subscriber. This is classic double dipping. So you pay your ISP, your customers pay their ISP, but now their ISPs want to charge you before they let your traffic reach their subscribers. This is what the current rules protect you from. The current net neutrality rules say that the ISP at the subscriber end can't block or throttle traffic or demand payments for priority treatment from anyone except their own subscriber for traffic coming to that subscriber. So right now, the current rules, they don't stop the ISPs from blocking and throttling traffic or having, these fast lanes and paid prioritization. All of that is possible under the current rules. The only thing the ISPs can't do is charge anyone but their own customer for that service. And that protects enterprise customers from having to pay for somebody else's Internet access. The current FCC leadership wants to kill the existing rules, and that means letting cable companies and telephone companies demand payments from anyone trying to reach their subscribers as a conditioning of letting the traffic go through. So, classic double dipping. This is the reason why the FCC has always regulated the terminating access monopoly and spent the past 20 years weaning the industry off of a double dipping system and into what's called a bill and keep environment where everyone bills their own customer for that customer service and keeps the revenue. Nobody tries to bill non-customers for service, which is the double dipping model where the ISPs would charge someone other than their own customer to let traffic go through. My parting comment on our last podcast was that enterprises needed to speak up on this issue through their DC offices, through their trade associations, through end user groups, if they want to make sure there's no double dipping in the Internet access world. And we talked about how if end users don't speak up, we can't blame the FCC for following the cable company telco roadmap on policy. You can't blame the telcos and the cable companies for being self-interested and wanting rules that let them double dip. Well, end users did speak up. The FCC received over 24 million public comments on the issue. And let me just say, when I was an FCC staffer, there was a record number of public comments on an issue one time. 1 million comments came in on the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction in the Super Bowl. That was by far the high watermark of comments on any issue ever before the FCC. Now they've received 24 million.
So, wow, 24 million. So, I mean, clearly net neutrality, it's an issue that people care about, and I presume that enterprises do care about it. So, with all those comments, what did the FCC do about overturning the net neutrality rule?
Well, it didn't play out the way we might wish as customers. So we had a new FCC chairman appointed in January of 2017. And he put out a notice of proposed rulemaking in May of 2017 proposing to eliminate the rules. And of the 24 million public comments that came in, the vast majority supported keeping the rules. There were, the usual problems in some of those comments. There were about 450,000 comments filed from Pornhub.com. There were some with Russian email addresses. There were some with stolen identities from the dark web. But when you strip those out, the majority of comments supported having the net neutrality rules. Despite that, the new leadership issued an order in December of last year that it does three important things. First, it declares that Internet access is not Title II telecommunications, which means the FCC doesn't have the kind of regulatory jurisdiction that it has over regular communications networks. Second, the order said it killed all the rules against blocking and throttling and paid prioritization. So all the rules that prevented cable companies and telephone companies from charging non-customers to let traffic go through, those rules are gone. And third, the new order adopted what is called a transparency requirement and, touted as this huge pro-consumer benefit. It's a rule that requires ISPs to disclose the nature of their service to their customers, the terms of service, their network management practices, the performance characteristics of their service. So the kind of standard information about their product that you would expect to see when someone sells a product.
So an argument that I've heard many times, I'm sure you've heard this too, is that net neutrality, the rules for net neutrality, those weren't in place when companies like Google and Facebook and Netflix and Amazon and all these internet powerhouses, when they all started out, those rules weren't in place. So why is there now this concern that new startups will somehow be disadvantaged?
Right, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? We don't need regulation. Well, so we forget that there were these rules. The Internet was built on regulation for Internet access. The Internet came into existence because Internet access was regulated. Only back then, it was a dial-up connection over a regulated phone network into an AOL server farm or whatever other server farm. If you're not an AOL customer or a Yahoo customer, the reason why we have an Internet, the reason why AOL and similar companies could come into existence and bring the Internet into existence was because the phone companies were regulated common carriers who were prohibited from interfering with the traffic going over their networks. So the Internet not only depended on regulated Internet access, it wouldn't even exist without regulated Internet access.
All right. So what happens now?
Well, there's some procedural hurdles before the new order takes effect. So there's been some press lately about the new orders being officially released, meaning that they were published in the Federal Register, which is the sort of official announcement vehicle for the federal government when rules finally kick in. And normally that publication would mean that the rules take effect. But in this case, the rules first have to go through the Paperwork Reduction Act, which is an act that vastly increases the amount of paperwork required for rules to take effect. The Paperwork Reduction Act basically requires any agency to run its rules by OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, if those rules require any kind of filing by the regulated parties. So there's a PRA, Paperwork Reduction Act, review period that has to play out first. And that's going to take a couple of months. And then in the meantime, there are some other hurdles that the rules may have to clear. There's something called the Congressional Review Act, which is an act passed by Congress to enable Congress to invalidate a regulation it doesn't like. So as part of an effort to prevent unreasonable regulation, to kind of rein in agencies that were over-regulating, in this case, it creates a special process where majority votes in the Senate and the House can invalidate a regulation, and then the White House has to sign off on it. There is a growing number of senators and representatives, both Republican and Democrat, who have said they support using the Congressional Review Act to invalidate this change in the rules. It's not clear if they'll get a majority. It's not clear if Congress or the White House will side with the cable companies and telcos or with all the end users and businesses and tech companies who would like to see the rules remain in place. But that's a process that's just kind of hanging out there. The second hurdle the rules may have to clear is appeals. the Federal Register publication, it may not let the rules take effect till the Paperwork Reduction Act process plays out, but it does start the appeals process. It starts the clock ticking on the deadline for filing appeals of the most recent FCC order with the U.S. Courts of Appeal. There have been lots of appeals filed already. There's going to be more. They've been filed in different circuits, so either the courts will agree that this new order should go to the D.C. circuit because it's considered all the other net neutrality orders, or there'll be a lottery, but they'll pick a circuit, and that circuit will hear the appeal. That'll probably take a year or two to play out. The rules will take effect while an appeal is pending. Filing an appeal doesn't stop the rules from taking effect. And then in the meantime, the states are all rebelling. They have announced that they want to regulate the Internet themselves. They're going to have put their own net neutrality rules in place, even if the feds won't. That's a little problematic because the Internet is interstate, and the FCC has jurisdiction over interstate. The states only have, very limited authority over interstate traffic, so they may not get too far in that. The other thing the states have done is they're announcing contracting rules. Well, they will not allow ISPs to be eligible for state contracts unless the ISP agrees to abide by the net neutrality rules. So as all these processes play out, the Main Street businesses, enterprise customers, can still tip the scale if they weigh in. Every enterprise customer in America should be all over their congressional delegation telling them that the ISPs should not be allowed to double dip, that enterprise customers are not interested in subsidizing the telephone companies when they provide service to their subscribers. So it's still the case that enterprise customers should be working with their congressional delegations and their trade associations and any other groups they belong to try and get the right outcome here and protect themselves from double dipping. What's happening with the net neutrality rules, it's not a deregulation agenda. It's a telco cable company agenda, and it's up to business to try and rein it in.
All right. Thank you, Colleen. As always, this has been very informative. And if you, the listening audience, would like to learn more about net neutrality and maybe you want to get involved and make sure that Washington hears your voice, please shoot us an email or give us a call. And as always, if you have other ICT lifecycle needs, you can contact us and also check out our websites or stay up to date by following us on LinkedIn.